My name is Ian McNeice. I played Winston Churchill in the recent episode of Victory of the Daleks, in the Doctor Who series, with the new Doctor, Matt Smith, and with his delightful new companion, Karen, Amy Pond.
I actually wanted to ask a Doctor-related question first. I'm kind of curious, were you somebody who followed Doctor Who in its original run, and who was your Doctor, if so?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I've met quite a few Doctors in the past, I have to say, and when I went to a convention, a sci-fi convention, before I actually did the episode of Victory of the Daleks, and I was, like I am today, sitting down doing some autographs, and I'd done Dune and things like that, and the person next to me was signing autographs as well, and his queue went out of the door and up the freeway to some government, but it was in fact, you know, I can't even remember his name now, for goodness sake. No, it was Colin Baker. So, you know, that's what happens at these conventions, that you meet all the doctors, which are great.
And of course, you'd also worked with the 8th Doctor, Paul McGann, in a previous film before.
I did for the radio version of Doctor Who with Paul McGann. Yeah, who I think is also great. I mean, I actually did a TV show with him recently too.
Can you tell us more about that? We should be looking for that here in the States.
Do you know? I don't know whether you do it. Jonathan Creek. Have you ever had that show over here or not?
Unfortunately, not yet. We'll have to be looking forward to that one.
It'll come.
One of the other big questions that I wanted to ask is, in terms of fandom, I don't think this is your first experience with some rather devoted science fiction fans.
No, I've been very fortunate because it's the gift that keeps on giving. If you do a Doctor Who, you suddenly get this whole area of conventions that you go to, and I've been invited to several in England, and then last year I came to Chicago, where I am again now, to do a convention, and then about a month ago I was in Los Angeles for Gallifrey, which is extraordinary. That's the really big one, and that keeps on going. I mean, that was 3 days of non-stop fun, where they have LobbyCon, which is, you know, in the lobby they have drinks. And I spend most of my evenings in there with a lot of the fans. It was huge fun.
Of course, they must have ate it up, especially if you had a cigar handy, just the cigar.
Absolutely. No, that's right. That's Doctor Who. I've got my fake cigar here with me today. And my Doctor Who glasses, which I'll put on for you. Yeah.
We will fight on the beaches. We will fight.
That's true. In fact, it was quite interesting. I'd done a play just before I did Doctor Who. I did a play at the National Theatre in Britain with Jeremy Irons. He was playing the part of Harold Macmillan. He was the Prime Minister of ours, and I played Winston Churchill in that, and I think that's how I got the job for the Doctor Who show.
Well, you played a couple of different political roles. Probably chief among them, obviously, Winston, and then, of course, the Baron, although it's a different types of politics altogether.
The Baron Harkonnen was an absolute coup for me. I'd seen the movie, the Sting movie, as they call it, even though it was Carl McLaughlin who was the main character. But having seen that, I saw the Baron in that, and I loved that character. So I really championed for the role, and I was so thrilled to get it. And in fact, I think I'm very excited because here tomorrow we have Matt Kiesler, who played my son in Dune. So I can't wait to see him. So that'll be very exciting.
I was going to say, one of the things that set Dune apart in terms of what people expected from, as you say, the Sting movie and in the books is that famous internal dialogue that all of these characters have.
Yeah.
And you didn't have the kind of the externalization that they had with the Sting film, where you didn't have the option of just getting dubbed and looking very serious. You had to bring all of that internal dialogue out in the physicality of your character. I mean, how difficult was that to convey?
I think what happened with the director, John Harrison, who wrote it as well, had done something very particular with it. He'd actually done it in rhyming couplets, which actually made it quite Shakespearean in a way, and I think that's, to a certain extent, myself, having worked with the Royal Shakespeare Company for many years, helped me get the role, because he thought I could bring off that dialogue, which was very particular and very precise. The fact that it was a mini-series, the fact that it was over 6 hours instead of a 2-hour movie, meant that you could delve into the books a lot further than you could just in the feature film.
How great was it to actually get a chance to return to the character? It's not one that you had to put on the shelf.
No, I was very excited because, you know, having died at the end of the first series, I was very upset when I heard they were doing Children of Dune, and I thought, where's my chance? And of course, they rang up and said, you're coming back. You know, I said, well, how am I coming back? You're coming back in the dreams, man. You're coming back in the dreams. And I said, I can't wait to come back. So that was very exciting.
Another big question I had is what we talked about before, is how different is the fan reaction here as opposed to the UK? I've heard that it's just so much a part of British popular culture that, do people notice you as you come across the street? Do they instantly associate you with Winston or your character in the show?
I have to say, it's very interesting that, because it's obviously in England, where Doctor Who is a big thing anyway. Just wonder what that was. There was to actually find that there's actually a huge fan base in America for Doctor Who too was very exciting, and I think it's very, like, just people coming up, walking past here today, get very excited when they see that Winston's here, which I'm thrilled to be here because of that. No, and quite often, and I'm very surprised how often actually at airports or in supermarkets, someone will come up and go, oh, weren't you that guy? And they say because of the HBO show I did with Rome, so I get noticed as that and all. But there's also another British show called Doc Martin, which is now being featured here on BBC America. Or in fact, on Monday I start the 5th series of that. So that's a lot of people know me from that too. So, you know, great.
The thing that is interesting is that you do have so many long-running characters, and I mean, do you have to have any struggle in having those people inside of your head there? You've got so many different people that you've been with for such a period of time. What is it like to let one of those characters go, or to? Well,
I have to say that the Doc Martin character is a character I play. He's set in the west of England, in a place called Cornwall, which is a little fishing village down. And they are very particular down there, and so when we go down there and make it, we go for 4 months. We're amongst them in the village down there, and there's a group of fishermen who come up to me every single time we go down there, and they say, every time I get back, and they say, right boy, you're going to get the accent right this time. And I never do. I never do. I always make a mess of it. But that's a voice that recurs all the time when you go back to revisit a character. And I have a son there in the show called Al, played by a wonderful actor called Joe Absalom. And we really have become a father and son now. I look on him as my son, which is great.
I have to say, it's a pleasure having gotten the chance to talk to you here today. And I've really had volunteered so many different roles. And
Thank you.
Really, the only other question I had, and it kind of relates to your co-star here, is that you've worked with a lot of mechanical equipment in these very physical roles. You're having to run alongside Daleks in Doctor Who, and then for Dune, you have these elaborate cranes that are actually simulating flight for your character. I have to say, are you kind of at the mercy of the operators and the special effects men during this?
There was something that happened in Dune which was very special to me, which was, I didn't know how they were going to fly me, right? So I kept emailing the director and I said, how I'm going to fly, because I'd heard from people that the harnesses with the wires were quite painful, especially for a big guy like me. So I was very keen to know how they were going to do it. So I turned up and they said, well, we're going to have a rehearsal for your flying. We did it in Prague. So I turned up on the day and they had this extraordinary string, which was a crane, and on the bottom of it was a bicycle seat. So I sat on it and I thought, okay. And then the crane went up like that, and I went up with it sitting on the bicycle seat, and it was fantastic. And I came down, I said, well, that's great. And they said, it's great too. And so I came the next day, and there was no bicycle seat. And I went, what happened? And they said, you look as though you're sitting. So I said, well, what are you going to put in this place? And they said, don't worry, we've got something very special. And they produced this racing bike seat, which is like a little thin thing like that. You can imagine what that's like for a heavy guy going up on it. It was so painful. But then they put straps down the side of my legs that I could rest on too, so it helped. There was a gentleman in Prague who was the man who was the dolly pusher, who pushed the crane around for 6 weeks since we did it. At the end of it, on the very final day, I wheeled in a small version of the crane and on the crane were 25 boxes of his favorite beer.
Oh, nice.
And I said, you have been my legs for the last 6 weeks. This is my thank you to you.
Wow. So you definitely have to establish a good relationship with everybody on crew.
Absolutely, because he was in fact my he was responsible for hitting my marks all the time. I just had to get on that crane, and he lifted me up and put me wherever it was. Of course, with the special effects, what they do is they paint that out later, so that all goes away, and you just see him going up in the air. But it was very challenging.
Who's responsible for keeping the Daleks on mark on the set?
The Daleks now, if you do a cutaway to the Dalek later on, and you can see the Dalek here, you'll notice that if you take the top of it, there's an actual operator inside of it, okay? But it's very Heath Robertson inside. It's been the same way for the last 25 years. There's no high tech about it. And they have little pedals at the bottom which move the Dalek around. It's really, and I met the characters who've been doing the Dalek operators, and they've been doing it for like 15 years now. And they're really experienced at it, at hitting their marks. But when you hit it, like you see in the episode of Victory in the Daleks, they really were getting hit inside. and it was a heck of a noise.
No, thank you so much for your time. I think we've got such a long queue now.
Well, you got it. Okay.
To stop.
But
hopefully we drummed up some good business for you, because it's a very worthy person to have come here.
Well, that's great. No, I'm
just so appreciative of your time. Thank you.
No problem.